Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session about Meta's policies from the side of the Oversight Board. This is an interesting session for us because we have followed the Oversight Board work since the beginning. We actually had an interview at the beginning when the Oversight Board started with the director of the board, and now after 2-3 years of the board being active, I'm happy to be joined on this conversation with Nighat and Khaled Mansour. Nighat is a digital rights advocate, and she's also the executive director of Digital Rights Foundation in Pakistan. Khaled is a long-term journalist and human rights activist, and both of them are very active members on the Oversight Board. Khaled and Nighat, welcome to this session, and thank you for accepting the invitation.
Thank you, Mohamad,
for having us.
Great. So I want to start with a broad question for you both, which is what changed in the Oversight Board in the last 2-3 years? Like what happened? I know we're gonna dig into more details, but just in general on like with everything that's happening around us politically, technologically, there's so much interest in the content moderation, and your work is really at the core of the content moderation. So what happened in the last 2 years, how things have evolved and changed with the Oversight Board?
Khaled, you would start.
Sure. So I'm the more recent addition to the board. I think the procedural changes is that now our mandate has expanded a bit. So instead of issuing binding decisions to Meta to take down or leave up certain content, now we can also instruct them just to leave it up with labels, for example. Also, we have expanded to the new outfit, which is the threads. I think also in terms of cases and advisory opinion, which is a deep dive into issues, we have issued 2 important ones. One on COVID-19, which is important because it touches on how you should speak about health issues over social media platforms. I know our audience here maybe are more interested in conflicts and stuff like that, which makes anxieties high and differences really sharp. But health issues maybe have much more wider impact on all of us globally. So our COVID-19 advisory opinion with lots of recommendation to the company on how to deal with that was really important. Also of what interest to our audience here with the Shaheed, the advisory opinion that maybe Nighat will speak more about. There was some high interest cases like the one about Trump, a recent one about Biden. I think we have helped or maybe forced Meta to become more transparent on certain issues, including, for example, that for a long time it did not tell people why they are taking down a post or why they are imposing a restriction, and now they have to do that. I think these are the main trends I noticed since I joined almost 2 years ago, but maybe Nighat has a different view of this.
Thank you, Khaled. I'm going to turn to you, Nighat. You're not only on the Oversight Board, you're also a well-known activist in the digital rights scene and covering Pakistan. And Pakistan doesn't even get a lot of attention in the media. So I know we're going to talk about the Oversight Board, but also this is an opportunity if there is anything you want to share at the beginning about your work in Pakistan, and then we can move to the Oversight Board question. I mean, this is out of the program, but I would like to give the chance to you, Nighat, and to our audience.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mohamad. I think it's a very good question to start with because I'm part of the Oversight Board because of my my work for years that I've been doing around digital rights in Pakistan, now in South Asia. And you're right that Pakistan or several countries in the region hardly become part of the big news cycle when it comes to digital rights or this AI hype that is going on. But some of the very important things, so I'm wearing my digital rights activist hat and digital rights foundation hat at the moment. a lot of conversations that, and I'm sure during Bread and Net, we have had these conversations around different legislative developments in the region, and something that we are seeing in Pakistan at the moment, that, you know, we have been basically fearing about and have been sort of giving warning to international actors and stakeholders and friends in the digital rights community, that how good legislations in the Europe and in the Western democracies can set bad precedents for several other countries. And now we are seeing after elections, now the new government is it has been established, and they are now taking, you know, parliamentary sort of business and doing legislative work. So we're seeing this like barrage of new laws coming in around controlling online spaces, or addressing disinformation or deep fakes. Again, the same narrative that years ago have been used by the government in Pakistan to actually launch a very problematic law, which was Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act. Now we are seeing another version of the same law, which is version 2.0. It's called Digital Protection Bill. And, you know, it's kind of, you know, giving the same sort of line of argument that we are going to hold companies accountable and platforms accountable because they don't listen to us. So that's why we want these kind of laws. So this is what is happening, you know, in the country. And this is a very tiring, exhausting fight, I would say, that we have been fighting for so long.
Thank you, Nighat. And there's a lot of similarity of what's happening in our region as well, and other global majority countries.
Yeah,
So
Mohamad, if I may come in, because
Yes.
Pakistan shouldn't be feeling that it's alone. I mean, if
Yeah.
you look from Jordan to Russia and from Egypt to Israel and elsewhere, you have this plethora of similar laws, call it Electronic Crimes Acts, Digital Safety Acts, all of them motivated by national security consideration, and national security consideration ill-defined, undemocratically defined, and they use them to clamp down basically on free speech under the guise of security. I think this is very serious, and it has not been helped by similar trends in the quote-unquote free world. So now you have certain slogans being chased away by countries like Germany, or even being questioned and with a thought about legislation even in the US. So that's a very serious trend.
Absolutely. Especially with the Gulf funding and support that's going everywhere, including Pakistan, from Saudi Arabia, and how much the regulation that's happening in Saudi Arabia or UAE or other Gulf-rich countries is being promoted to other countries like Egypt, like Pakistan, like even Lebanon and Jordan. Maybe not so much Egypt, because Egypt have their own context, but like, yeah, this is something that we need to dig more of. So back to our topic, we follow extensively OSB work, and we want to thank you for some of the good work that you have been doing, especially most recently the Shaheed policy. So I want to go with you, Nighat, about like the Shaheed policy. Like, I know there's like so many people mix Shaheed policy with the DOI list, but these two are different. So I wanna talk with you about like what's the technical differences between them, like how, like like my question is a difference was really technical in terms of like how Shaheed has been censored is different than the other DOI list, dangerous organizations and individual list, to explain for some of our audience, like what happened, what was the differences, and what do we expect to hear from Meta? Because we know that you published your opinion, which was a good one, less than 2 months ago. But and I think Meta has 2 months to answer. So where are we in the process as well, Nighat?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mohamad. And I think the question that you have asked, I would say that maybe Khaled is best placed to respond to that one specifically. But if I can set a little bit of a stage around Shaheed policy advisory opinion, because it took us a very long time. You know, the advisory opinion request came to us, came to the board from Meta in March 2023, and it took us a year to review it and released it. And Meta is actually due to respond to our opinion on on 23rd May 2024. I would say that, you know, I think over the last 3 years, it's not only about Shaheed. I think what we have realized that the company at the board, we have realized that the company at least acknowledges that its policies have likely silenced millions of people who have had their content unfairly censored and removed. And so they reached out to the board to help it find the right way forward. And now we as a board are clear that this silencing should stop. And that's what we said in our policy advisory opinion as well. Through our research, through our consultations, we came to know that most people who use the term Shaheed are not supporting terrorism. And some of us are very clear because of our own context and where we live and how the term is being used in our own regions. But I think for the company, it was very important to know different contexts, different cultures and jurisdictions. And it's like many people express these terms like in solidarity with victims of attacks, talking about those who have died younger or died defending their country or during floods. And so what we have seen that the company has taken a very rigid and biased view that doesn't consider major cultural or religious differences. And what we have said in our opinion, that they should prioritize reforming its policies and practices to reflect the nuance and end the wrongful removal of swaths of content in many parts of the world. There are several recommendations in the Shaheed PO, but what we have found that there is no evidence that this moderation at the company level is promoting security. But it's very clear that it has led to silencing of millions of people, often during and in the aftermath of conflict. Company Meta has many policies in place to address content that is more directly harmful, and it should rely on these without using this blunt moderation method that is doing more harm than good. That's what we believe at the board, and said it in the policy advisory opinion. I don't know if Khaled wants to add into this, but the conflict in Gaza has reaffirmed the board's initial findings that this policy is doing more harm than good. Out of more than 12,000 Facebook and Instagram posts reviewed by independent analysts, only 2 were found to be supportive of Hamas. Nearly all uses related to description of Palestinian casualties in Gaza Strip, indicating that moderation of Shaheed is an ineffective tool to guard against the glorification of violence. However, a researcher can only see content that remains on the platform, and now what Meta removed immediately for violating its DOI policy. We as a board will continue to urge for more transparency, and in the PO, we called on Meta to provide more granular regional information about what content was being taken down and where. So, Khaled, over to you.
Well, thank you very much. We are usurping Najem's role here as a moderator.
Yes,
this is something we work against in the oversight board simply because we are created to defend freedom of expression in an equitable manner. But I think what Nighat so well put together is that the bad elephant in the room, if I can say that without irritating animal rights defenders, is the DOI, the dangerous individuals and organizations policy, or the counterterrorism policy of Meta, which can be a nightmare in implementation. And it acts sometimes as a drag net that takes the good fish with the bad fish, with the sharks and with the dolphins. And that's not really a good thing. I mean, the dominance of a counterterrorism discourse and the legal frameworks in many countries, all countries of the world mainly, is problematic, but it is there. It's a fact. We have to deal with it. What we need to do is to ameliorate and to lessen the effect of counterterrorism policies on speech. And in the cases of Meta, there are two issues. One, transparency. If you want to impose your counterterrorism rules against speech, you have to be clear about who are, in terms of individuals and groups, are on the list. And this is something that, as an oversight board with the mission to defend freedom of expression and balance it with safety, of course, we have asked for that for several times. Governments, when they have these lists, like the US, they actually make them public, and making them public gives a chance for organization and people to challenge them through legal means and channels. The link between the Shaheed PAO and this dangerous organizations and individuals policy of Meta is very clear, because basically Shaheed was banned when it was linked to somebody on this list. So you say Shaheed XYZ, and Shaheed is a Kashmiri guy who is maybe a resistance person who is on the list. Okay, then that post, voila, goes out. Or Shaheed, anybody from the Middle East, it goes down. So because this is part of the three parts of that policy that act as a dragnet: glorification of praise, representation, and support. Of course, if you represent a terrorist organization, your posts shouldn't be allowed, or if you are raising funds for them. But glorification and praise is the most difficult part, especially for news organization, which is, for example, making a code about somebody in a certain place who is supportive. But this is important if you want a good news coverage. So you're killing news coverage if you apply this automatically. What happened, because not over 95% of content moderation, not only in Meta, but everywhere else with these big social media platforms, is done by machine algorithms. The automated algorithms have not, this is something we're working on with Meta, which I have to say I appreciate, because it's probably the only organization that applied the self-regulation mechanism. The automation algorithms need to be audited, retrained on regular basis. And it's really problematic because they don't get the nuances, they don't get the sarcasm, they don't get the self-referential stuff sometimes. So the Shaheed was part and parcel of the big problem of this policy, which really affects the Middle East, but also a lot of communities and countries in the global south.
Yeah, thanks, Khaled. I want to ask, like, about the DOI list. Like, if Shaheed succeeded in moving forward in the process, like if Shaheed will be like if Meta will reverse their decision about Shaheed, do we have a chance in looking at the DOI? Like, for example, today I was looking at the news, and the Prime Minister of Malaysia, they want to challenge Meta because they removed the post that he met Ismail Haniyeh, which is the Prime Minister of Gaza. He's Hamas as well, but he belongs to the political parties, whatever. So like if the Prime Minister of Malaysia have met someone from Hamas as a leader, it is in news, right? It is in news that will be published on their local media. It will be published on international media. It will be published on New York Times, maybe. And it should be accepted to be published on Meta, because the news itself is not a support for anything. So will there be any more digging into like the DOI list, into like, in terms of like support, or just sharing news, or like how do we see the DOI list moving forward in terms of like, one, is it going to be ever public? Because there's like thousands and thousands of names as we are discovering. And two, is there a way to make it less rigid as it is, because it's a machine of censorship, right?
I mean, I can quickly chime in. I think that's why, Mohamad, I would encourage everyone to read our, policy advisory opinion, because it has so much nuance in our recommendations, and we very clearly said in our opinion that Meta should end its blanket ban on Shaheed, and when it is linked to people who Meta considers to be on a DOI list, or who are on the DOI list that Meta has. because the current practice has had a discriminatory and disproportionate impact on information sharing, as you mentioned about the rights of journalists, newsworthiness. And I think that's all we have mentioned in the policy advisory opinion. When we released the decision, one of our co-chairs, Hala, basically said that, and we all agree on this, that terrorism destroys lives and it undermines very fabric of our societies, but it is counterproductive. We believe at the board that it is counterproductive to stop journalists from reporting on terrorist groups and to limit people's ability to debate and condemn the violence that they see around them just because of the presence of a single word. I think maybe Khaled can add on to this, but I think we also should broaden our scope when we look at the word Shaheed. I would urge my fellows and in MENA region also that do not only see the term Shaheed or the censorship around Arabic terminology in the conflict state or in this region. We have borne the a massive burden of this censorship when there was huge influx of refugees in Afghanistan we have witnessed, or when Taliban took over. So this word actually played a massive role in censoring voices of journalists in the region who were actually reporting on that conflict, or in other regional conflicts in South Asia like Kashmir, etc. So I don't know, maybe Khaled, if you want to add onto this.
I mean, you're quite right, Nighat. I mean, of course, I disagree with Nighat sometimes, but not on the issues that we are discussing today. But Shaheed is not only something that concerns the Middle East. I mean, Shaheed is used in so many Muslim communities around the world, but it can be used also by communities that speak Arabic or has this as a loan word in North America, in South Asia, and in many other places. So it's not only of concern to MENA. Two issues here. One, the lists that Mohamad spoke about. I think the board is on the record asking for these lists to be made public. But at least let's start with auditing them. Let's not act as the US has done before, infamously, when Nelson Mandela stayed on that list several years after he was released from prison and negotiating to become the president of South Africa 30 years ago. So these lists need to be audited. These lists need to be made more public, more transparent, information about them published, because that will help both Meta as a company and also us. Let's remember that the Shaheed issue came because of these long lists that has people who are dead as well. Probably as we hear it from news reports. Secondly, newsworthiness. I mean, Meta has a license for news reports which speak about this issue. Let's remember that regarding terrorist organizations, it's glorification, supporting, and representing that's banned. I don't think any news report can fall under any of these three categories. There need to be much clearer, and we did that in an opinion we made a couple of years ago about Al Jazeera, that there is a clear need to apply this newsworthiness license. I mean, imagine, Hamas is basically meeting either through mediators or whatever, but with the Israelis and the CIA in Cairo every week. If you write a news report about that, are you glorifying anybody? Or are you writing a news report so people who are following up the war in Gaza, the carnage, the murder of tens of thousands of people, who would like to know what's happening in terms of the ceasefire talks? So this is one issue that really Meta needs to work harder on. And not only newsworthiness, political speech. What if I and Mohamad and Nighat and some other people want to have a discussion over Facebook or over Instagram about what's happening in Gaza, and we mentioned the words Hamas and Israel and other and Hezbollah, all, two of these are listed. So it's really problematic, and more action is needed there.
Thank you, Khaled. This is really like one of, like the core issue of this problem. Like if people are covering the news, it's newsworthiness. So like, how will the AI catch and differentiate between the newsworthiness or the glorification or supporting? And also like how much of sarcasm or funny content is being actually censored because of all this AI imposed policies on so many people in this region and other region as well, in the global majority. Within your conversation with Meta, like, did you reach any point where it's clear like what's gonna happen with this AI machines or algorithm? What do you see the future of this in terms of like your role as oversight board and Meta's response to that specific point?
So Mohamad, we in a couple of our expedited decisions also around the conflict, but also in this opinion, we asked Meta to share more information about how its automated tools are working when it comes to enforcing its DOI policy. And I think we are pushing more and more company in several of our decisions. But there are two more things that I want to add. Because you mentioned content moderation, it's a very complex business. It's not an easy job. And with more use of AI, it's becoming more complex. And so in this opinion, we basically asked Meta to ensure that its content moderators, the human moderators that they have, they should have clearer examples of what is considered neutral or unclear references to designated individuals, or for instance, as you said, sarcasm, or which is for reporting purposes. So helping users understand Meta's rules and to help content reviewers to make better decisions. We have been telling Meta to do more to make people aware of how company decides who is on its designation list, as Khaled already mentioned, and ensure that it audits regularly and who they are removing from this list, who are still being censored. So I think that there's several things that we have tried to address, and we are really looking forward to how Meta responds on 23rd May.
Thank you.
If I may add to that, Mohamad,
Mhm.
that AI is not a newcomer to that table. Maybe some of the generative AI aspects are, but firstly, we have an issue of feasibility here. You have maybe 3 to 4 billion with a B accounts on Facebook and Instagram. You cannot feasibly, economically, or humanly do content moderation for them, where you issue tens of millions of decisions a day using only humans. So the challenge is how to do machine learning algorithms, especially ones that keep on learning, okay, not the mechanical ones. How can you do it better? There are various solutions for this. One, auditing, continuous auditing of these algorithms, changing them. And it's a laborious issue. It's costly, but it's extremely important. Retraining, as they say it, because I mean, in this lingo, you are training the machines to find the problems, and then they learn, they take human decisions, they include it in their own learning. So this retraining is extremely important. Escalation mechanisms, and by escalation, I mean if machines catch a trend of quote unquote over enforcement of a decision, it can just escalate the whole issue to a human. Because certain issues, as you said, as sarcasm, referential issues, deeply nuanced cultural issues, still would need humans. But of course, you need to have humans who know the dialects, humans who know the context, humans who know the history, and you do all of that so you catch up trends of over enforcement. For example, like as many people, especially media reports, noticed over the Gaza war since October 8, or October 7, that there was what some people described as massive or wholesale removal of content, and some people described it as shadow banning. I mean, there was a need then to do an audit and see what happened. some people said that the threshold of confidence, the likelihood of mistakes and violations by these automated machines were changed. Let's just be clear here. Artificial intelligence, AI, or stuff like that is ultimately done by humans. So we shouldn't be like hung up on blaming the machines and the machines are doing this. The training material are designed by humans. Retraining is a human decision. Spending is a human decision. So it's really a political issue at the end of the day.
Thank you, Khaled, and thank you for pointing out the shadow ban, because this is also on our list to discuss. I mean, this is really one of the most important points I feel in our region right now because of everything that's happening in Palestine. I know so many of us say shadow banning, but on the technical term, Meta prefer to use demotion. Whatever the term is, like we usually look at content moderation, like even if we agree or disagree with, there's a content that will be removed. I know as a content person, the person who published the content, my content has been removed. Most of the time, I might receive the reason why. So there is this relationship transparent happen anyway. When it comes to shadow banning or demotion, we have no clue about this. I know some people on the call here, some of our friends and partners in the region, they try to, many of us, we try to document some of these cases. I mean, can we really document hundreds of millions of cases? We actually can. It's a humanly impossible, but some of the people documented hundreds of cases. But like, it's not content moderation per se. It's deeper than that. It goes into like how the system works, how the algorithm works, and how just like what you said now, Khaled, is like all these algorithms, all these things happens with humans. Like humans designed this. Like, what can we do about this point? Is this an oversight board issue? Or is this just in this black box gray area that we really don't know who should we talk to? Because we talked to Meta and they deny that they're doing shadow banning. They denied many times, but there are proofs from so many people. And they also mentioned a lot about the policy of Meta as a company to shy away from everything related to news. So by design, if you share news, your content will be demoted because of their policy, and they want to focus more on activities, fun stuff. So it's another conversation maybe about the censorship by design from the company. But I'm interested in the oversight board. Are you folks taking cases from shadow banning? And how do you see
maybe
all this?
I would maybe start on this, and then Nighat can complement me if she likes. But it's we don't have enough time to go into all the details of that. But indeed, you are right. Meta usually uses the term demotion rather than shadow banning. I think it's less loaded, probably it's less negative. But basically, shadow banning or demotion means reducing the reach and the distribution on the platform. And the challenge of documenting this, despite the valiant efforts by some of the organizations who are attending BreadandNet this year, or even by organizations like Human Rights Watch, who issued a report recently, the challenge is that the company itself has to declare that, because we don't know. I mean, we know when our content is removed, and we know when we receive a strike because we had a violation, which is good. It's actually really good. But we don't know when shadow banning happens or when demotion happens. And the company sometimes claims that the reach declines organically. I mean, your posts are no longer interesting, for example. And I think it's time, and maybe over time they will be forced to do that, because under the Digital Services Act of the European Union, they will have to declare demotion if they apply it. There are actually good reasons for demotion. Remember that all of us don't see all the posts of friends or things we follow. We see two things. We see things that we like to see. So friends we follow more and we read more, their stuff comes on top of our timeline. And then the recommendations from Meta, in good faith, the recommendation stuff that's recommended to us is based on very complex algorithm of our past history, okay? Then what happens is that Meta decided to save us, let's take it at face value at the beginning, from spam, socket puppets, coordinated dis or misinformation, ad farms, inauthentic content by machines, da-da-dee-da-da-da, and it decided to demote that. The first step in demotion is not to recommend it. So you don't get recommendations of like ads from Thailand for certain food restaurants because you visited once one restaurant. So there is actually a good reason for that. The other aspect of demotion that's problematic is borderline content, which means this content doesn't really violate our counter-terrorism policy, but it's close. We are like sort of 80% think it can be violating, but the policy says it has to be 92% for us to remove it. So let's not recommend it, or let's scuttle the reach. I think the only solution, the only good solution for this is one, to become more transparent about it, at least to become more transparent with borderline policy violation issues. You don't have to be more transparent with spam or ad farms, because the concern here, and it's a valid concern and we can discuss it, that if we become more open with an ad farm or with a bot or with a company or a machine, what you will end up with is them gaming the system. Okay, so you're telling an ad farm in Emirates or in China, guys, you're being shadow banned. They will change and move on to another system. But I think at one stage or another, there needs to be a serious discussion about being more open about authentic members, I mean, real organizations and real people, and about shadow banning, because as you said, we will have less news or we will have less of this or that because it's borderline, because it's really close to becoming a violation. I think shadow banning or demotion is an extremely important issue because it has probably some people would argue a deeper effect on users, because when your stuff is removed and then you decide, okay, I'm going to stop doing this because I'll get my stuff removed, I'll get more strikes. Having said all of that, sadly, demotion or shadow banning is not part of our mandate. Our mandate is not what shadow banning is also called soft moderation measures, is with the hard moderation measures, which is removal, keeping stuff that's objectionable by certain users, or labeling stuff, etc., etc. But we don't have demotion under our mandate, as much as we don't have other services that Meta has, not only measures such as WhatsApp.
Thank you, Khaled. Speaking of this, I remember, I mean, some of the things that I want to mention is like the injustice that's happening in content moderation is actually not rooted only in the AI and how they're applying their policies. It's also following some reports, following some research. For example, like after the Sheikh Jarrah happened in 2021, SMEX and many other organizations in the space, we asked Meta publicly 5 different requests, and one of them is to really have an audit on why the Arabic and the Palestinian content has been removed and while Israeli hate speech has been thriving on their platforms. And after 2 years of that request, Meta, they actually did a research, so business and human rights, the entity, they actually did some kind of research on this topic, and they discovered that one of the things is there is over moderation when it comes to Arabic content. There are so many red flags on so many things. And for the Hebrew content, it's under moderated. They don't have enough staff. They don't have a lot of red flags. The AI is not being fed anything. So this was around a year ago, maybe. So we have Sheikh Jarrah in 2021. So until now, this issue is not being solved in terms of like over moderation and under moderation. Like I feel this is really at the core of content moderation as well. So I want to ask you if you are aware of like, I mean, I'm sure you both are aware of this report and the results of it, but is there anything that the oversight board can take from that research and give an opinion about it? Like Meta cannot, Meta, like the multi-billion-dollar organization, cannot tell us that we don't have enough money to hire employees to actually moderate the Hebrew language. Like there is definitely somebody who took a decision, and it is a political decision to keep this happening. Is there any way that you at the oversight board can challenge that?
So, Mohammed, I really want to acknowledge, the work of SMEX and YAMLE and other organizations in the region who have been raising these issues for years to the company. And I remember correctly that when we also asked Meta as a board that they are unfairly removing Arabic content and in Hebrew language, we based our information and knowledge on your labor and on the work that has been done by all of you. And you have rightly mentioned that BSR completed its report in 2022 and reviewed that and found that Meta's policies adversely impacted Palestinian freedom of expression and assembly and prevented them from sharing their experiences during conflict. Actually, Meta committed to making various changes. I think we as a board also has an implementation committee that sort of looks into how many recommendations Meta has implemented and how many they have committed to implement, how many are partially implemented, how many they have said that they cannot implement. So I think we need to, it's not on top of my head at the moment, but we need to go back and see. But I guess what Shaheed policy advisory opinion has said in lots of his recommendations, actually reiterating what has been already said, which kind of shows that a lot of commitment that has been made by the company hasn't been fulfilled in last 2 or 3 years, and that's why we again have recommended the same things in the opinion. But you're right, we as a board we try to sort of monitor the implementation of our recommendations, but I think for this particular case we definitely need to go back and see what they do, but also looking at the policy advisory opinion as well in terms of their response.
Thank you, Nighat. I want to look more at the questions, and I also already have a point that I want to mention that will also answer some of the questions that's been asked. Is we have seen Shaheed coming on board because Shaheed was a term that's been censored, and now the recommendation to be uncensored, which is a great decision. But we have now the term, we've seen a call from the Oversight Board, and I also want to encourage people who are on the call to actually look at this call. If someone can put it on the chat, I can do maybe in a minute. And there's 2 weeks to respond to the sentence from the river to the sea, right? The sentence was already accepted from most of the, basically all the tech companies. None of them have censored the sentence yet, or at least there was no intention, because it has a lot of historic, it has a lot of cultural content to it. And while so many Palestinians talk about it, also we've seen a lot of Israelis as well are using it. So how, can you tell us more about this sentence, how it came to board, why it came, if the sentence is actually not it has been used and not censored. So why it came? Did it came in the intention that maybe we should censor it? or it came in the intention to like, let's confirm it shouldn't be sent and it shouldn't be censored?
Let me clarify one thing. Let me clarify one thing before I pass the mic to Nighat, which is we don't pick up cases with the intention to do a specific thing about them. We pick up cases because they represent a public interest. We pick up cases largely because we think a decision on a specific case will have wider impact. Because at the end of the day, if we receive 3,000 petitions or complaints or appeals a day, and we did like maybe 55 cases last year, cases need to be emblematic, need to have wider impact. So we never pick up cases knowing what we will decide. We pick up cases that we think are of public interest. We pick up cases because we received complaints. So when we receive a lot of complaints or appeals about an issue and we see that it has raised a lot of public debate, so we also pick that case up. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I think it is in that spirit that From the River to the Sea, which is now, as somebody coming from that region, from North Africa and West Asia and Africa and what have you, all these geographic terms, it's not really about this region. This slogan is not used here. I mean, that issue is largely, primarily a Western case. Since the slogan became debatable with accusations largely from the pro-Israel factions because of demonstrations on US campuses and then in Western Europe as well. But it is a real issue. It is a big issue. And I think our selection committee, the committee that selects cases that we should look at, has seen the public value of looking at depth in this issue. But maybe Nighat will give us more sort of enlightenment on this.
No, I completely agree with you. I think it's in the of course as a board and the selection committee selected this case because of the growing divisive political debate continues around this phrase, and we as a board we actually believe that it should not be up to Meta or any private company alone to determine which kinds of speech should stay up or be taken down. And I think it's in the public interest that we as a board like to explore the origin and current uses of the phrase, and conduct research into online trends in content using the phrase and any associated harms in using it, the way we are seeing the debates around it. I would encourage folks to basically submit their comments. We have already received a massive number of amount of comments from all over the world, US, Europe, Asia, Middle East, but it would be, I would encourage people to submit comments. We have until 21st May, and you don't really have to be like really thorough or like it should be like really deep dive into this particular topic. Anything that you feel as an organization and individual, we welcome every comment and take into account those comments, because that actually builds our knowledge into deliberating on certain cases, and especially this one when it's during this conflict and when people are being censored on the in the physical world on the campuses.
And if I can add to what Nighat said, I know some people, some organizations always, but also in this case, think that the 2-week limit, which we already passed maybe 9 days of, is too short. Now, the issue is we have a cadence of actions we have to take to decide on cases. We give more time maybe when we have a policy advisory opinion, which is a deep dive like we did in Shaheed. But on our cases, I mean, if we give 1 extra week, that will affect many other parallel tracks. As Nighat said, I really think it's important for the public comments to come from everybody who's interested in this case, for academic, non-academic, political, ideological reasons, because this does inform our deliberations. the shorter the better, if I can say that, but you can also make attachments to existing research that you think expresses your views very well. It's really important to have a broad and balanced view of what the public thinks about this.
Thank you, Khaled. I'm gonna try to ask or answer some of the questions in the Q&A. Thank you everyone for the questions. So there's a question from Hannah. Hi, Hannah. So yeah, so one of the question is about the content, the human content moderation. Hannah is giving an example from Morocco. And I remember, Hannah, when there was a Moroccan third party doing content moderation, and there was so many like reports coming out, we saw that 90% of the results was mistakenly was giving mistake decisions because they were checking Egyptians content. And this is what Khaled was saying, I think, earlier, which is like people who are working on content moderation. I mean, this is not an easy topic. They need to understand the content, the context, the culture, the language. I mean, it's so many issues. So when Meta goes to Morocco and work with third-party company because it's a cheaper solution, like you said, and there's a lot of PTSD, stress, anxiety. I mean, they're not really thinking about content moderation. Like, they're not really thinking about solving the problem of content moderation. They are thinking about just checking the box that, hey, we are having content moderation humans, but they're in Morocco and we're sending them Egyptian content. So they're gonna be even doing worse than the AI and the algorithm decisions. So unfortunately, this is the case. But in the case of Egypt, you need to have more Egyptians who are checking the content and have understanding of all the policies and the content and the context, etc. I hope I answered the question. I'm not sure if Khaled or Nighat, you want to add anything to this, because also Hannah mentioned more about the anxiety and the stress that some of these employees in the third-party companies are having because of such jobs. Another question.
Okay.
Yes, Khaled, go ahead, please.
No, I just want to say very quickly that this is a very valid question. This issue has been subject for debate for a long time. Of course, it's not really part of our mandate, so I'm talking here in a personal capacity. This is something that civil society organizations, multilateral organizations like the UN, and even national governments should really pay attention to and work on with the company. I mean, to get content moderation right, all concerned actors should work on it, especially civil society organizations, because those are the guys who will defend freedom of expression, even when it means that companies need to pay more for better content moderation, need to pay more attention to the well-being of the content moderators, etc., etc., etc. So I would really encourage, Hannah, as an individual, us as individuals, you guys as organizations, to work more on these issues and to put pressure on social media providers to get this right, because there are so many things to fix, and they need more work.
Thank you, Khaled. There's an interesting question, and I think it could be by yes or no from your side. Does the board have the power to push for more algorithmic transparency so there's less confusion?
Nighat, shall we explain your smile as a yes, or yes and no, or no?
Yes, Nighat, yes. We want the
Maybe
yes.
Khaled, you can respond to this.
I think we are on the record asking actually for more transparency on algorithmic things, and even we discussed at one stage or another, I don't remember the language, but we talked about auditing, at least internal auditing. I mean, if the company says that we are doing this, we would believe them, but they need to do this. I think it would be great if we can find a way in which companies, Meta and other people, because by opening yourself up for self-regulation like Meta, sometimes you get more criticism than companies like Twitter, which are not. And people who love freedom of expression will tell you, but now we can do everything on Twitter that we cannot do on Facebook. But I'm sorry, but you will find a lot of craziness on Twitter that probably you will not find on Facebook. So it's a very difficult equation, right, to square. So having said that, no, there's a need to include researchers and trusted centers, even on narrow basis and on a small scale, into this auditing. That would be great. That would be great for the company, great for the research communities, and great for the users. We are not there yet, sadly, but yes, we need more auditing and more transparency on algorithms.
Thanks, Khaled. So there's this last question. If OSB's scope doesn't cover what you, Khaled, mentioned as soft moderation measures, including shadow banning, how can an organization advocate against such restrictions that are imposed without a clear policy ground? I mean, but you mentioned maybe to have a clear policy ground around this, right?
Firstly, as I make clear, it's now part of the remit of the Digital Services Act in Europe, and Europe is such a big continent and stuff like that. So this is one way of approaching big, large social media platforms about the motion of content. But doing research about it is really important. The Human Rights Watch report did not. I mean, it really depended on anecdotal and interviews, but it's really important. Companies read this and listen to it. So it's more important to put our concerns and our complaints about this in good reporting and in good research as much as we can, until companies will start to have to come around because of the DSA. That might not affect South Asia or Sub-Saharan Africa, but in due course it might as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Khaled, because a lot of times when we started working around platform accountability years ago, these companies were black boxes, and we didn't know about their policies and how they are implementing those policies and how, you know, like removals are taking place. And I think it's all the work that has been done by researchers, through advocacies, through pushing, lobbying these companies, even in the, you know, like when there is no clear policy, there are evidences that yes, it is happening. We are seeing this, we are facing this. And I think the more you push, the more company will realize that they have to deal with this, even if they don't acknowledge. And I think maybe in future, they will come to the board to deal with this issue. And I think that's where, you know, it's a right way. I mean, if anyone from Meta is hearing us, I mean, it's a good opportunity for them at the moment to reach out to the board and ask for a policy advisory opinion, maybe on demotions, you know, and have a, you know, clear, if they don't know how to deal with this, we are here to basically guide them.
Thank you, Nighat. Thank you, Khaled. Is there anything you want to mention before we close the session? Like, is there anything we missed or last point you want to mention?
I think you covered so many topics, Mohamad, but I would just like to stress that to get the content moderation piece right, there needs to be more collaboration between the tech industry, the civil society organizations, self-regulation experiments like the Oversight Board, national legislation, multilaterals like the UNESCO guidelines. We need to work. I know we have limited resources, but we need to work on multiple tracks because it's such a big issue and it needs a lot of like efforts from different perspectives to get it right in due course.
Thank you so much, Khaled. Thank you so much, Nighat. Thank you for your work in the Oversight Board. I know you both are human rights activists and digital rights activists. So keep doing the great work. And we want to try to also push from our side, our civil society and organizations working for better digital rights for everyone. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.